tell you a story tonight about a man that lived beside us at home in Banan in the 1950s. His name was Bernie, but he was better known by his nickname of Bernie James. Now, he lived on a small farm with his widowed mother, and if the truth be known, if it wasn't for the mother's widow's pension, he wouldn't do it all. Now, the land down in Banan is only fair to middling at the best of times, but by comparison to that standard, Bernie's land was quite poor. His late father described it as a handful of gutter up on stones with water and rushes where a snipe would need Wellington on the finest day in summer. Now, Bernie wouldn't have been the brightest scholar going to school, and that was that he carried with him his entire life. But he was a very jovial kind of a fella, and he was a very good singer. And he liked to hang around when he went to town. He liked to hang around with the bank manager and the big shots of the place and the local solicitor and old Colonel Murphy. And he was full of his own self-importance. And influenced, you see, by the antics of these people, he decided that he'd get a checkbook. Well, we're talking now in the 1950s, when probably nobody other than the local schoolmaster and the parish priest would have a checkbook. He was the talk of the place. They were saying, a checkbook, no less. Well, yeah, 'twas far from checkbooks, he was reared. But anyway, he got the checkbook, you see, and he was going around and he'd have it sticking out of the top pocket of his jacket this way, showing off to everyone. Now, as I said, Bernie wasn't the greatest scholar, and writing in particular would not have been his strong suit. And you see that even though in those days the checks were a bit bigger than they are now, he still wouldn't have had enough room to write his name on the check. So he developed a kind of a squiggle. You see, like all the big shots, like the doctor, now you could never read a doctor's writing it, you know. And he continued on like this, you see, and he developed this. And when he'd be writing a check, then you see, he'd hand the check to the person, and they'd write out the check themselves, and he'd put his squiggle at the end of it. And of course, he was writing checks. We're talking about the old money now, and he was writing checks from everything from half a crown up. But of course, the local people had no interest in taking checks, and they weren't a bit interested in it. But of course, the shopkeepers inside in Kinmare had no bother in taking his checks, and he was writing checks for this, and he was writing checks for that, and he was delighted with himself. But of course, there was no talk at all of making any lodgement into the account. And it wasn't long until this came to the notice of the local bank manager, Seamus Hennessy. And Seamus wasn't fully conversant with Bernie's domestic situation, let's put it this way, and he decided that a friendly note would do him no harm. So he wrote him a nice short note, Mr. Bernard McCarthy, Rock Street, Banan. Dear Mr. McCarthy, would you please call at your convenience to this branch to discuss the operation of your account? Now, Bernie got the letter and he was looking at it, and it took him quite a while to read it. And the word convenience in particular had him stumped. He partly guessed that the bank manager didn't want to meet him down in the little houseen at the end of the garden, but he couldn't be sure until the mother came home. Now, that was Friday when he got the letter, and of course the postman used to come to Bernie's house at about 2 o'clock in the day, so it was too late then to go to the bank at that stage. So the following morning, he struck off. He was going to strike off the following Monday morning first thing, and on Sunday he was around after Mass, and he had the letter sticking out the top of his pocket here, and he was telling everyone that I have an appointment with the bank manager, and he called me Mr. McCarthy. I'm going to see him now, he said, first thing tomorrow morning. And of course the prime boys were saying to him, Bernie, you shouldn't be going in that soon now. You should be waiting a few days to show the bank manager that you're an important man as well. And you know, he was half taken in by that, and he decided he wouldn't go until Wednesday. And about a month later, by Monday evening, the excitement was too much for him altogether. And he headed off into town first thing Tuesday morning, dressed up in his Sunday best, and his checkbook sticking out of his pocket, and the very minute the bank opened, in with him. And he went up, he shouted up to the first girl he saw inside, I have an appointment, he said, with Mr. Hennessy. And she said, what's your name? And she brought him over, and she put him sitting over in a nice quiet corner of the bank. And Malair, he picked up the chair and he planked it out in the middle of the banking hall. And he sat down and he was looking around and watching everyone coming in and out, you see. So it wasn't long until Seamus Hennessy, the manager, came out and brought him into his office. Now, those are the days when bank managers had offices and when they brought you into the office. And he brought him in, and there was very little small talk around. And Bernie said to him, the bank manager said to Bernie, he said, I just wanted to discuss your account with you. He said, you seem to have been writing an awful lot of checks. Oh, Christ, he said, I have. He said, I'm on my 6th book in 3 weeks. Yeah, he's the banker say, I can see that, he said. But he said, it might have slipped your notice, Bernie. He said, your account is overdrawn, actually, he said, by almost £50. And he said, I'll have to ask you to lodge that amount of money now before you make write any further checks. And Bernie looked at him and he said, £50? Where would I get £50? Sure, I haven't tuppence to my name, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write you a check